Tyrone from Copenhagen, Denmark. Big fan of the podcast since discovering the show last year. Have been listening every week since then. What do you think of Ring of Honor? What do they need to do to set themselves apart from all the competition and the superior wrestling promotions in the U.S. right now? I, like you and many others, was very disappointed with the ROH side of the MSG show, WrestleMania weekend, and feel their biggest weakness is that they're leaning way too hard on over-the-top gimmicks and sports entertainment-style angles, which makes them seem cartoonish alongside the sports-focused, hard-hitting style of New Japan. I think ROH needs to drop the silly gimmicks and get back to the classic pure wrestling shoot style that made them so great back in the mid-2000s. Maybe they can make it a case where they take more of a sports direction and start introducing MMA influences like rounds, cornermen, ref stoppages, etc. I don't remember ever seeing a wrestling promotion doing that, and it would definitely be something different from what AEW, MLW, and Impact are currently doing. What do you think? Can ROH make a comeback? You know, PCO is a silly gimmick, and he's the most popular star in the entire company. And I love PCO. Dalton Castle. Dalton Castle has just fallen off a cliff. But there was a time a couple of years ago where Dalton Castle was one of the hottest things in wrestling. And he was a very good wrestler, but it was all a silly gimmick. He would come out with the boys, and he'd have the feathers, not rooster. I was going to say rooster feathers. The peacock feathers and everything. It was an over-the-top gimmick, but it worked. I don't think the answer is to eliminate that completely, because then you're eliminating what makes wrestling so fun. I think you can have a good mix of the two. You know, and right now they've got the Allure. The thing about the Allure, which is the Velvet Sky, Angelina Love group, it's basically the Beautiful People. And the Beautiful People was this holdover from TNA back in the day. And it just does not seem to fit with what you would expect from a company like Ring of Honor. And so when they started to do stuff like that, I remember seeing them at the MSG show, and I'm like, well, this doesn't really feel like a Ring of Honor show to me. They're kind of getting away from what made them so great. I kind of agree in that way, but I don't think the answer is to get rid of all of the silly gimmicks, especially when you have some that the fans are really into. You know, you want to exploit that. You don't want to get rid of that. You don't want to change that. But the key word there is some. You don't want to go overboard with it. I think the big problem is, well, one of the big problems, ROH lost some of its biggest names. They lost some of their biggest names. With Cody and Kenny and the Bucks and Adam Page, who I'm sure is going to go on to be a bigger star than he is now. Marty Scurll, who knows what he's going to do come this fall. He may stay, he may leave. I would think he would leave. Doesn't necessarily mean, by the way, if he leaves that he's going to AEW. He's got a good thing going with Villain Enterprises in Ring of Honor right now, and they may yet want to put the championship on him. You know, I think he would have been a bigger choice, certainly, than Matt Taven to be the ROH champion. But they lost a lot of talent, and they also relied too heavily, probably, on their alliance with New Japan. There were a ton of Ring of Honor shows that were, just inundated with talent from New Japan, and people would get really excited. Oh, we get to see Tanahashi, and we get to see Okada, and we get to see Ishii. And after a while, or Naito, or whoever, and after a while, it's like, well, at some point, people are going to want to have to pay to come see Ring of Honor stars. And if that's Matt Taven and Jay Lethal and whoever else, then so be it. Make them want to come and see those guys. Or do a better job of creating your own new stars. And I think part of the problem is they relied too heavily for too long on the New Japan guys. So you had a lot of people who went to that MSG show with a lot of enthusiasm to see Ring of Honor and to see New Japan. But really, they were there to see New Japan, if we're being honest. And Ring of Honor did nothing on that show to get people to feel any differently. So there's been a lot of missteps. The biggest commodity that Ring of Honor had to offer for all of those years, like when I started going to shows in 2006, was, its greatest strength was the quality of the work. It was the best professional wrestling that you would find anywhere in the country. The quality of the matches, which featured some of the very best independent talent in the world. NXT has effectively taken that spot. That's really what's happened here. And all of those ROH guys are pretty much now with WWE. Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Roderick Strong. You could find a whole host of others. Even guys who maybe just passed through Ring of Honor. Others have moved on to other places. Low key, Austin Aries. But, the Briscoes have stayed. I think the Briscoes just re-signed. The Briscoes are lifers in Ring of Honor. But everybody else pretty much left. And if you are trying to rely on more than just the quality of the matches, if you are going to do the sports entertainment type stuff, then it better be good. PCO, it's going to take more than just PCO. PCO's one guy. So they're going to have to come up with some kind of formula that works where they can somehow offer something people aren't getting from somewhere else. And that's going to be very difficult for them to do because, as you said, you've got AEW and NXT and MLW. They're doing a lot of what Ring of Honor was doing that made them so successful 10, 12, 13 years ago, 14 years ago. Ring of Honor with MLW rising and AEW starting feels like an afterthought. And I just was done talking about the NWA as well. They're going to have a tough time, but you've got the NWA as well doing their thing. It's going to be a very tough road, I think, for Ring of Honor to try to get back to kind of that position that they once held. And maybe they're making more money now than they were 12 years ago. They've got a multi-million dollar company now behind them. They've actually got money and resources behind them that they didn't have in 2006. But none of it matters if you don't have the fans to come out to your shows. People shit on WWE. Oh, look at this crowd. This crowd is empty. Look at SmackDown. They had this whole side of the building is tarped off. Well, Ring of Honor has had those issues as well. You see pictures leaking out from ROH events, and it's depressing to watch. It's depressing to see. Certain cities they'll go to, they may sell out, they may do very well, but the crowds have fallen off and the crowd enthusiasm has fallen off. I think it was very telling watching that video from the other night. I don't know where they were. It was like a half-empty gymnasium, and it was Matt Taven, I assume, defending the championship against Alex Shelley. And there was a fan in the front row who fell asleep. Now, it was one guy. It was probably some drunk guy who got drank too much and passed out. But it was almost like a weird metaphor in a way. This half-empty building, and here's Alex Shelley and Matt Taven wrestling in what I assume was the main event, or one of the main events. Half-empty building, and there's this guy, and this guy is out. His head is tilted back. Alex Shelley was tapping on his leg. He wasn't waking up. Finally, he woke up. And it was just this sad sort of look into what Ring of Honor in some ways has become. I was at the Ring of Honor show just a few weeks ago, and I had a good time. But it definitely has a different vibe than it did all those years ago. I don't think there's any easy answer. I think incorporating MMA elements, there may be some that you could do, but MMA is MMA and pro wrestling is pro wrestling. You can borrow a few ideas here and there, but you can't turn Ring of Honor into this glorified MMA promotion because you cannot do MMA. It is, at its core, it is pro wrestling. It is simulated violence. Nobody is going to watch a professional wrestling promotion in this country anyway. Maybe in Japan you could do something like this, but nobody is going to spend 5 minutes of their day watching a professional wrestling promotion in this country that is just booked like an MMA promotion. Because why would you do that when you could just watch MMA? Just watch the real stuff. So you can't drift too far in that direction either. Maybe there's little gimmicks and elements you could borrow. That's not going to turn their fortunes around. Because now they have rounds. It's going to take a lot more than that. And I don't have an easy answer. They're in a really tough spot right now.